Happy Friday, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me and see me all right, Ian. uh, I don't. Ian said they've been doing technical support hell all morning. Hopefully your afternoon is better. I used to do some tech support and I just couldn't deal with it. I couldn't. I don't have the patience. I don't have the patience for it. Somehow gaming brings out some of my better qualities, and doing tech support kind of stuff did not. I used to not be. I get anger. I get anger. I get angry. I don't like when people don't seem to be paying attention or following instructions and then coming back. One thing I did do help me develop was a very, I guess, thorough documentation style, because I would write up these documents because I didn't want somebody to call me back. So I would write up something that I felt like was so airtight in terms of, if you just follow these steps, and I'm going to give you every single little step, I'm not going to assume anything, that you'll never call me again, never have to deal with me again. And so those actually came in handy, and other people would use them, and actually ended up being floating around, and I would end up being the person that would not be the first person on the phone, but I would ended up being the if you're really stumped, okay, then talk to me, because I'm sure people would respond saying like, he's not being very nice to me. But you help people with the same thing over and over again. I shouldn't even say this. You help the same people with the same thing over and over again. It would get to me. It would get to me. In any case, but we're gonna go to a happy place, hopefully. And this happy place is on Reddit, which is not actually known for happy places, but we do what we can with what we have. At least we're going to start here. And as usual, if you have folks send me stuff, I'm happy to look at it. I would love to actually move away from Reddit and move to more community-driven stuff, but I don't get too much community-driven stuff. Even though I beg and I plead you out there to send me things, and send me your tired, your poor, your ideas, that is, things. I don't get them. So I go to Reddit to surf, and hopefully we'll get to a place where I'll get some more. Rob says, oh, thank you, Rob, for the compliment. Appreciate it. I do what I can. I try to find my zen place. So here on this multi-Reddit, I got it sorted by new, because sorting by hot, I feel like creates some oddities. It says that Reddit is definitely from the bad place. Yes, Reddit is probably a tool of the bad place for sure. Though I have to say, for the most part, I find the OSR Reddit and some of the other Reddits, like I do really appreciate some of the Reddits that are subreddits, I should say, to use the nomenclature correctly, are pretty good. I don't find too much issue in there, I have to say. But you go on the more, I guess the problem with Reddit is that the more broad the subreddit, the more you're going to get, I don't know, the worst parts of humanity are going to show up. Whereas I think, OSR, because it's pretty darn niche, I feel like you get the people in here for the most part who want to be there. Right? I think that's always the big thing. When you get a place and people want to be there, then that tends to eliminate a lot of the issues. And the smaller places like that. That's why I always think that sometimes when you get charged for stuff, like to go somewhere that you have to pay a little price. Yeah, it's a pain. And you think, well, why do I need to do that? But the flip side is I think when you have to pay, when you have to invest, you have to do things, I do think that gives you a different mindset. Whereas if you just open it up, then, there's like kind of like when you're going and people are with online games for the most part, right? A lot of folks, they'll hop on games, hop off. Won't be, necessarily attentive. They won't be respectful. They won't. Why? Because it doesn't matter. It's just this thing. But when you force them to go through a process or to pay a price of some kind, it doesn't even necessarily have to be money, but money, it could be money, it could be time, it could be effort. You have to fill out something you got to do. You go through that and then you get into it. Then suddenly it becomes valuable. I think that's what it is, right? It becomes a valuable community, space, place, whatever. And once it's got that value, you definitely treat it differently. Rob loves Reddit. Loves that it's a mix. Too many places are in monoculture now. Yeah, that's true. I mean, that can happen on Reddit also, though. You tend to get these kind of swings, right? Of one sort of movement will kind of wash through, then another one washes, and back and forth. Okay, so this one I just thought was interesting, just off the top of my head. It's from the DM Academy subreddit. So just keep in mind that they're more 5th edition based, but I think they often ask questions and offer up advice. Like this particular post is that could have broader implications. Hot take: tell your players what you think they would do. Excuse me. Let me take a sip of watered down apple juice for the working man. Maybe clear out whatever's in my throat. I think at least some murder hobo parties end up there because when they look at their character sheet, 3/4 of the front page is combat and numbers involving combat. If the player is intentionally making his character a killer, that's one thing. But sometimes what a player needs is some options. The best example of this is how Disco Elysium splits the main character's skills into voices that speak to him and can tell him what to do. Similarly, you can appeal to their background, alignment, contacts, passive perception, racial features, or even past behavior to hint at what you think the character would do. Even as you leave the final decision, I think it helps engage the player in playing the role they choose. So I think we need an example. So I feel like from the title, I understand what he's saying, but I don't think his write-up so far has helped elucidate that much. So let's see the example. Fighter sees a +1 sword that might replace their sword that is tied to their backstory. Fighter: it would fit me, but do I want to give up the sword? DM: the chaotic part of you tells you to break it. Fighter says, what? The DM says, what? Fighter says, would I even be able to break the sword? DM says, only one way to find out. Fighter says, I'll roll to break the sword. DM: don't. Your sword, or you don't? I don't know. Your sword hits the flat of the +1 sword and becomes Swordbreaker, the Slayer of Swords. +1 sword with a +1 more against sword users. Okay, I guess that's one. All right, now I guess let's see example 2. Fighter sees a +1 sword that might replace their sword that's tied to their backstory. Fighter: it would fit me, but do I want to give up the sword? Now the DM says, the lawful part of you tells you to leave it. It's the property of this noble knight, and he should keep it. Fighter: but then I don't get a sword. Maybe I'll take it anyways and leave my sword. DM: roll religion. Fighter: 15. DM says, you remember a noble ritual to trade swords with a great warrior, blessing you as their successor. It's typically done between the apprentice and the master. Later on, the fighter dreams of being trained by the ghost of the warrior who he traded swords with. Okay. So I'm going to say I kind of like this and I kind of don't like this at the same time. I don't think there's anything wrong with the GM making suggestions, particularly in the cases where maybe the players clearly don't have some sort of context, or there's something missing, or if there was, if you were doing some kind of like a personality sort of thing, if that's how you were saying, where you have these elements are kind of like different devils and angels on your shoulder, so to speak, and talking, you could maybe have that. I think, I mean, ideally with everything, I'd love it to be player driven and not me as the GM saying, because I think, let's go to the first example, right? So you find a +1 sword in the ground, you're the fighter. Ooh, I had this, you're torn. Oh, this is a sword that's better than my sword mechanically, but this sword has meaning to me. And then the DM seems like, if we can read between the lines in terms of what the DM is thinking here, it seems the DM is thinking, all right, this is what I'm going to do. I get it. I get that your sword is ordinary, but it's a backstory sword, and this is a +1 sword. So I am going to give you, in essence, a way. I am going to allow you to basically level up your current sword, and we're going to do it through this process. So to do that, I'm going to suggest that you do this thing that you didn't think about doing at all, right? So you say, oh, the chaotic part of you tells you to break it. And you go, okay, how it works. So on the one hand, you think, well, look at this. And I think especially for 5th edition, I think a lot of folks would be like, oh yeah, this is brilliant, right? Why yeah, we don't want them to switch out their swords. We want them to keep this heirloom blade and we want it to improve. And here's a way to do it. Great. Yeah, that's cool. A couple of things here. How many times are you going to do this? A +1 sword's not that. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, at a few levels, sure, it's great. It's not the end all be all. So are they continuously going to do? Maybe you could say they find a +2 sword that you can break that one. I mean, there's a way, but it might become the specialness of this moment, which seems, oh, this is really cool, might become less special if you're just doing this now I found a +2 sword. All right, break it. It kind of, the example kind of in the sense of feeling like it's a unique moment in this character story seems really cool. If they end up doing it 5 or 6 times, maybe it's less cool than that. I almost think if this is what you want, some kind of heirloom sword with special properties that grows as the character grows. Maybe just have that mechanically in from the start, maybe. But the other part is there's a little bit of that where I feel like I'm pushing the player down this path that I want them to take. Maybe it's for them, but it's kind of like for me. And I think I would rather have it, if it's even possible, to set up something where they engage with these different parts of themselves, and then we can have a dialogue about it. So I think I would rather if this was set up, and I don't know Disco Elysium. I don't know for Disco Elysium, but I would rather, I like the idea of having these voices that you can go, but I think I would rather, and maybe you have to train your players, well, not maybe, you probably have to train your players to do this, for the player to say like, ooh, I think my chaotic side would like to for me to break the sword, and then me as the GM, I can say, oh, that's interesting, and then we can kind of figure that out. But I kind of appreciate what it's trying to do. You end up in a situation where you may not even realize it at game start that, oh, they have this heirloom sword, but it's just a regular sword. But I want to help them increase it, and here's this way to do it. But I think ultimately I'd prefer it to be player first instead of GM first, where I'm sort of less the guidance and me kind of maybe trying to get in a situation where the player comes up with the spark, and then I kind of help move it along. But it can't always be like that. So I don't really have a problem with the GM. I don't have, like I said, ultimately I don't have a problem with the GM sort of suggesting things or making these things. Maybe it's the fact that if you're going to get this where these voices are sort of speaking to you, that it's not something that's happening a lot. I think that's maybe the thing. It's like once in a blue moon, that's great. If it's like, if this is something where every session I am kind of, because I think what ends up happening is me as a GM ends up just driving the players. Your chaos side says for you to go left. Your lawful side says to go talk to the innkeeper. And it's like, then it's just too much guidance. If this is like a once in kind of a long while sort of thing, then I feel a lot better about being kind of the hand of fate and sort of nudging them a little bit. Because they can still say no. It's just the chaotic part. But I'd like to see, maybe I need to read that system to see how they maybe formalize this. Ian likes the idea of the contextual intuitions, but Rob says, give them info, sure, tell them what to do, not so much. Yeah, maybe you could rephrase this. Like the chaotic part of you not tells you to break it, but like the chaotic part of you wants to break it. Maybe something to make it. There's probably some different ways, but it is interesting for sure. And I'll definitely have to check out Disco Elysium. Is that Ian says, is that a game already, or is this a video game? What is, I guess maybe I thought it was maybe an RPG that I hadn't heard of, but is Disco Elysium is that like a video game RPG? I'll have to look it up because I have not heard of it. Okay. What else have we got here? Trying not to TPK a level 2 party. Well, just try. Let's see. How do you create that? I don't know. What percentage of the population can cast a cantrip, a 5th level spell, a 9th level spell? I'm not sure. This might be cool. One of their favorite old school maps. I don't know. What is it? What is it? The Venturi Project? Jetsam? I don't even know this one. It is a cool looking map. Elevation levels? That's interesting. I'm not familiar with it. It's definitely a TSR. What game is this from? Is the game called the Venturi Project? No. Is that from Star Frontiers or Gamma World? I don't even know, but it is cool. A lot going on that. Okay, it's a video game about Elysium, Disco Elysium. I'll need to check it out. Ooh, this one. All right, let's see. This one's just in the generic RPG subreddit. So this is just all, RPGs, just, anything under the sun. It tends to see where you tend to get a lot of this sort of anti D&D crowd is kind of here. There's often a lot of anti D&D sentiment. Just FYI. I suspect this will be an unpopular position. I just want to know if I'm alone. And here it is. I have zero interest in trying yet another game system. I have 2 reasons. This was Candy L Pop posted by. I have 2 reasons. One is internal. One current system isn't perfect, but it's by far my favorite. I've played a dozen systems across the spectrum of tone, setting, and mechanical crunchiness. I wouldn't mind a new setting, but I'm experienced and self-aware enough to say that I haven't the mental overhead for another crunchy system, and I've lost interest in Rules Light. I know the latter are perfect for some folks, but I'd honestly rather learn a new board game at this point. I have a group for that. The other reason is external. 2 of my 3 tabletop role-playing game groups would disband rather than switch. One is new, young, and just coming to grips with its first system, and the other barely has the time to play, much less learn. My third group, the most fun and regular, is composed of old friends scattered across 4 time zones. Gaming facilitates our only time together. One of them is gently and respectfully agitating for a system change. I have no right to criticize his fun, and the others will acquiesce eventually regardless, so I keep my mouth shut. Their time and friendship are too precious. However, the idea fills me with quiet dread. The last time we went down this road, no system was as fun as our current one, and the group shed players with every system switch until there were none left. We didn't play together for 2 decades. Well, it's an interesting conundrum. I think comes up often. I think there's probably some ceiling to the number of games I can kind of keep in sort of active rotation, right? But I'm fine to learn a new one. I wouldn't want to do. I don't know if I could go, at least as a GM. I think as a player, well, depending on the system, it can be a bit easier. If this person doesn't like rules light systems, and I think that helps a lot. If I'm going from, we're going to play Troika this week, we're going to play this other game this week, we're going to play Cairn Into the Odd, and if I'm a player, okay, I can sort of feel my way through. The GM can kind of help me if I'm struggling. But the rules are light and they're sort of similar to things I know, so I can go back and forth. If we were going, we're going to play Harn this week, Rune Master next week, Pendragon the week after that, then Warhammer Fantasy the week after that, then GURPS, I probably would be struggling mightily. Now, the GM can have a lot of influence over that, because if the GM can handle a lot of the stuff in terms of knowing what to do mechanically, then as a player, that also makes it fairly easy. When I'm running my game, even though I'm doing kind of a BX system, my players don't need to have BX memorized. I just will tell them, okay, here's what you're going to be. This is a save. I think, and I played last night, and I think it came out there was a saving throw and needed to be made. I was like, okay, just roll a d20, and I'll let you know it's a saving throw, and I'll let you know because I have all the stats and everything in front of me. Great. So they don't need to look it up. They don't even really need to know anything other than how to use Dice Made to roll a d20. So having a GM who's willing to do that work can make it easier. And I think that translates across systems. If I'm playing GURPS and my GM is really comfortable and knowledgeable in GURPS, then I just need to be able to find some tidbits on the character sheet, like, my skills and understanding what the numbers mean. Is higher better? Is lower better? What does it mean? And so I can just understand my character. And then beyond that, the GM can take care of it. But I do appreciate this point of view, which I think comes up a lot. A lot of folks don't want to learn a whole bunch of systems. And I think it's why a lot of times there's a lot of these those threads. There are a lot of threads end up being rather frustrating, because you get people who want to, you get one set of people who are more on this side who want to keep the system and then homebrew it to whatever degree to get to something else. And you get a lot of people, sometimes I feel like it's really obnoxious, where it's just like, I have one particular small issue with this game, and you get these people in there, well, you should really go play this other game. It's like, I don't want to go play that other game. I'm just going to fix the one little issue I have with this game, because who knows how many issues I'll have with that other new game. Like, just because this one game does this thing poorly doesn't mean I need to, we're all going to drop and switch to a whole new system. We're just going to fix the game we have. But on the other hand, you see the opposite, where it feels like someone wants to take, like 5th edition, say, I want to play a sci-fi pro wrestling social deduction type game, and I'm going to bend 5th edition into pretzels to get there, where at the end of it all, it's going to almost bear no resemblance to 5th edition, and someone's going to say, hey, there just happens to be a game that already is that. It's probably easier just to learn that new game, right? So I get it, but I think this is a totally valid perspective. There is always going to be barriers to learning new stuff. Some people, I think the people on the internet tend to be the ones who feel really strongly, who are really invested in the games. And so they don't see this as a big deal, because they're constantly engaging with this. Everybody, folks in the OSR, in terms of what you see in the OSR internet groups read tons of games. They have bookshelves full of games and full of stuff. Games they're never gonna play, like me. But hey, we're gonna read them and we're gonna talk about them. We're gonna break them down, all this stuff. So that's great. But get outside that bubble, and people don't want to. They just want to be like, I don't know. I kind of like D&D, or I kind of like GURPS, or I kind of like whatever our current game is. Why am I gonna go learn something? And there is a point there, because just playing a new game just to play a new game has limited value. Yeah, sure, it's nice to find new games, but but nice to try new games. A part of that is because we value the experience of trying new games as a thing. Like, I'm going to try this to try this. But if you're interested more in just the playing of the game, then why am I going to just go? I'm happy with the game I'm playing, and it's a fun experience. Why do I need to go play a bunch of other games? I think that's totally fair. I mean, like, look, you own a car. If you're not looking for a new car, you're just going to go test driving cars just to try them. Like, no, I don't go test driving new cars until I'm thinking like, we need a new car. Other than that, I'm totally happy with the car I have. And I think a lot of people are happy with the car they have. And even though on the internet, folks are all about test driving cars all the time, the fact is, when you get out in the world, people are like, no, I only got 10,000 miles on this car. Why am I going to go start test driving other cars? Hey, R3N07, thanks for hanging out. Hey, Mo Milkshake, thanks for the compliment. Rob says, okay, but lots of the OSR people. Yeah, I mean, lots of the OSR people online. I'm not convinced that OSR necessarily people out in the world are playing bunches of games. I mean, a lot of that, well, at least on the grognard side, you have folks that have been playing AD&D or whatever it is for years and years and years, and they're super happy to keep playing AD&D or whatever it is for the next years and years and years and years. But the internet skews the perception of what the thing is. And I think when you're used to being on the internet, like, for example, used to being on the OSR subreddit or the OSR Facebook group or whatever on the internet, and people are seem to be playing and reading and engaging with like thousands of systems, you might think falsely that you should be the kind of expectation of just regular folks who maybe enjoy OSR, maybe play OSR, but aren't this dedicated in the fandom, and it's ain't gonna be there. It says they aren't OSR, they're just OS. Yeah, it's the old school thing. But I think even with like OSR, I do feel like that we have to. I do feel like even there's probably the OSR, though. Maybe I would say if there's any corner of role playing games who were as more the the super engaged community, I'd probably guess it would be the OSR. But yeah, I think there are even folks in that space who just aren't on the internet. They pick up some games, they play them, they're at the cons, but they're not like all over the subreddits and things like that. I do think that there's always probably some kind of like 90-10, like at least like 10% of the people are online, and those 10% are the most super engaged, and then the vast unrepresented majority are just playing their games. They picked up whatever book they picked up, and they're enjoying playing it, or they're not, and that's it. And they're not surfing around. I mean, I've mentioned this. I've talked to people and friends of mine who really love role-playing games, and role-playing is a big part of their lives, and don't go near any of these kinds of places and have no desire to. They're not, it's not a part of their experience. Whereas me and probably a lot of folks here are constantly reading through feeds and doing stuff there. But I think that, again, I just think you can get a false sense of what the majority is doing. I just don't think they're doing this. All right, what else we got? Let's see. Need advice for a session. I don't know what I can help you with, and it probably already happened. So, no, 2 hours ago, so they could probably still use some help. Session at C. I don't have any particularly good C stuff. Candy shop prices. Let's see. No. Okay, more Ocean Harp. Let's see. I'm reading Apocalypse World. Am I a prude, or does the author read like a horny teenager? Could be a little bit of both. What are your world system of government? Let's see. I'm getting lots of Shadows of the Demon Lord or Ruins of Simbarum. Simbarum. I have to read Simbarum. I have some of the books. Why does someone downvote this? What could be possibly wrong with this person's question? All right, so the question, and I don't have an answer for this. I'm really kind of curious about the replies and stuff. So I have Shadow of the Demon Lord, which I probably should do a read through because I don't think I have. Super interesting system. I have some of the Simba Room books digitally, courtesy of Free League, but I haven't really looked at those either. I thought Simba Room had really amazing looking kind of artwork. Really had a really strong look, really captivating. So this is posted by Claybound. They say, I've been making a homebrew setting that matches well with the tone of these games, and I've been having 5e burnout for a while. Although my players are a bit skittish with trying new systems, I think these two might be an easier buy-in for both of them. My question is, as someone who hasn't played any of the two yet, which would you recommend for me to run? And then a side note, I've seen discussions about base Simba Room versus Shadow of the Demon Lord, but I want to see if the Ruins version of the game provides better balance or anything else compared to the old system. All right, so that's what he said. And some reason somebody downloaded them. I don't know why. Mr. Shadow says, not trying to pick a fight or anything, but balance isn't really a concern of the original Simba Room game. It's closer to the OSR philosophy in that regard, as is Shadow of the Demon Lord, in fact. I think game balance doesn't really work anyway. It's more like game fairness. Neither system has an explicit expectation of PC survival. Demon Lord actually calls this out in the intro to the rules. It's entirely possible that PCs can get into situations that they can't win and will likely die if they don't flee. Likewise, Simba Room doesn't have classes or levels. It's a point-based system of tiered abilities. The wizard wants to learn to be pretty good with a sword, they can. They just won't be as good as someone who hasn't split their points between magic and melee abilities. I personally hate 5th edition, so I don't have any reason to play Ruins. If I was forced to choose between playing Ruins or Vanilla 5e, I'd choose Ruins. If I had a choice of playing Ruins or the original Simba Room or Demon Lord, I'd choose one of the latter. So that was their commentary. Ian says both of those are on their list for want to play. Would probably wait for Shadow of the Weird Wizard. Oh, is that a sequel, a retheming? I haven't heard of that one. I'm so out of the loop. I don't know. I got to get better. Someone's got to I got to get on more emails or something or other because I am constantly, I feel like, behind in what's coming or what's doing what. Rob says they're going to try to run Shadow of the Demon Lord in the summer. Oh, cool. Let me know how that turns out. I played briefly, very briefly, in a game of Shadow of the Demon Lord. There was some supplement that had it more kind of Mad Max tone to it, and that's what we played. Fortunately, it was a play by post, but it just didn't make it very far, which was unfortunate. Though I did manage to kill my PC, just unlucky. But yeah, he died to misadventure. Some kind of robotic turret cut him down on running while he was running towards an elevator. Yeah, happy times. So Claybound responds, no worries. I completely understand the point about balance, and I guess it's also more fair to call it game fairness. I think I'm just slightly worried as I have a mixed bag of players, some min-maxers, some will play more fluff/flavor, and even if they know it's what they picked, there's bound to be some comparisons between your abilities compared to other people's abilities, which is why I asked about it. Okay, I mean, if you're going to get, I think some of the stuff, so here's what I'm going to say, which I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's a good tangent. So hopefully you'll stick with me and you can let me know whether it's off or not. I have mentioned before that I feel like the responsibilities of the GM have gotten horribly inflated. Okay, encompassing everything, right? Players just have to show up and then the GM's basically responsible for everything else. And this is where I think the player has to take some responsibility. If you're going to play something for fluff and flavor, then you have to acknowledge and recognize that doing that means you may not be as efficient as somebody who is playing the mechanics. And if you don't like it, then don't do it, right? Or bring that up in terms of when you're doing a session 0 type, hey, we're thinking about a new system. You could say, hey, how mechanically diverse are things? If I want to make something that's totally goofy, like how much is my goofiness going to penalize my character efficiency? You may care, you may not care. It really depends. And I think you also have to really just, embrace your culpability, your responsibility for that as a player. You pick a class that's very non-combat, does other things. And when combat comes up, you're just going to have to figure out how to make it work or hide and wait. I remember, I guess it was a 2nd edition game. I was playing a bard. We got into combat. The bard, he climbed up into a tree and was trying to do support stuff with his music, but he wasn't fighting because I'm like, I can't fight. I don't really have anything, so I didn't. And I sat up in the tree with my lute and I tried to play some emotionally supporting music, and that's just what it was, right? And then it's but I have to be okay with that. And then really, you know, make sure the rest of the group's okay with that as well. You have those discussions, have those sessions, zero things. But I don't think it's up to the GM to somehow make it right. Right. And the thing is too, like with a group like this, if you have half min-maxers and half of fluff maxers, that sounds disgusting. Half of fluffers, flavor maxers, spicy, half spicy people, call it that, half spicy folk. That's a really hard group. You're not going to find a system that's going to cater equally to both of them. I mean, 5th edition probably does the best job, as good a job as any, because they're at least trying to balance it so that you can't have any can't go through any alleys that are going to send you to a bad place in terms of your character design, for the most part. I know it's not perfect, but you can tell me in the chat if there's some perfect system out there. I tend to not believe it so much, but I think a lot of the systems that are held out as perfect just haven't undergone the scrutiny as D&D has. That's what I'll say about that. But you know, this is a player thing. I mean, obviously as a GM, you need to be mindful and say, okay, let's do it. And this is kind of what they're doing, but players can't be both. You can't say like, well, I want to be this guy's maxing out everything like to be mechanically perfect. I want to be the same as him, but I want to do everything like goofy, fluffy, flavorful. It's like, you can't have both. You can't. I mean, either have that guy min-max your character sheet and you figure out how to make it flavorful, or, you know, not. And then the only other comment in here that's not a response to that first comment is, okay, so just talking about Shadow of the Demon Lord, saying it's an easy transition if you have to drag them from 5th edition. Character creation is mechanically very quick and simple, and they're rolling d20s plus a modifier against a target number, so it feels quite familiar. You can have them up and running quick with a starting character in minutes. There are only a couple of rules you really need to explain upfront: boons and banes. This is useful if your players are resistant to change. Yeah, boons and banes is very similar to advantage, disadvantage, except you're adding, I believe it's a die, and you can add both. I have to say, in my short experience, that was something I didn't love. And I think actually, I believe that Dragonbane has something similar where you're adding your boon and your bane. No, they have advantage, disadvantage, but they also have adding a die. But anyway, Shadow of the Demon Lord, if you get a disadvantage type situation, you'll have a die that you would roll that's a negative modifier. You could also have a positive one. And then I forget there's some, it even might be something else, but I thought it was a little bit clunky. Like one of the things I like with really advantage, disadvantage, despite all its limitations, is that it's just super simple. And this with adding 2 dice and having to do some other futzing around, I didn't love so much. But I only played very little, so certainly don't take what I'm saying as the final word. I really need to play it some more. Hey, Inkpen Productions, welcome aboard. Happy Friday to you. Okay, Elder Brain Lair, chess puzzles, no. Oh, I do want to go. Someone remind me, or maybe I'll go there now. There was a good post in OSR I wanted to hit. The one problem with this multi-Reddit I haven't figured out yet is the OSR subreddit tends to get buried a bit because it just doesn't get as much traffic as the other one. So I'm just going to go there quickly. I can come back and see if I can find. I'm not going to click on my own thing, but hey, I did drop a video earlier. Check it out if you're interested. I thought it was pretty good, but you know, you can let me know what you think. I'm biased, of course. Here we go. This I thought might be fun. So this is posted by Ward Galuk. They compiled a list of the most frequently recommended OSR modules. Last month, their list of OSR systems was met with a very warm welcome from this community. If you missed it, it's over here. Now, by popular demand, one person post a companion list of OSR and old school D&D adventure modules. So let's figure it out. So this part gets into his, I guess, the process a little bit more in his footnote. Hey, Gashrin. Wow, you're late. And so we'll read through it, and then I'm curious to take a look at these. This will be a good list. I think I remember I kind of bookmarked it because I thought this might be a good list for me when I'm looking for things to to pull out of the bookshelf to cover, assuming I have it, or try to get a hold of it, would be good. So the list below is painstakingly compiled by hand from about 278 sources. The items are rated based on their popularity in the sources, not their perceived quality. All right, so I think so we'll get a sense of that. So high, it's rated on popularity, not necessarily on quality. One of the most impressive achievements of the OSR movement is the incredible proliferation finely crafted adventure modules, including classic dungeon crawls, as well as sprawling mega dungeons. Okay, blah, blah. I'm going to skip that. Let's go down. All right, so here we go. Wow, so on the popularity scale, B2, the Keep on the Borderlands, comes up on front. I should have done some kind of, like, we could have done like a guessing game, but this is not surprising at all. Not surprising, at least, that B2 would get mentioned a bunch, because it is one of those formative modules in terms of the OSR. It's interesting because it's not the only one of that era of TSR D&D. It's but it Matt Finch and I talked about it, how it captures a very simple but useful formula: home base, some kind of wilderness, bad place that you go to solve or delve or whatever reason, right? Like good place, wilderness, bad place. It's a really simple formula, but it works. It's that sort of I don't know, primal or just elemental. It works. So not surprising. Tomb of the Serpent Kings, also not surprising, since it's very well thought of as sort of an intro dungeon. Stonehell, also not surprising. Though maybe I'm surprised a little bit that's this high. But I don't think I could have been able to. I might have been able to guess Keep on the Borderland, Tomb of Serpent Kings. I feel like after these, and I don't even know if I would have thought that. I think I might have at least guessed that those might be towards the top. Everything below this, I'm going to have very little idea. So Stonehell, which we looked at a little bit, and Barrowmaze, which we also looked at similarly. Rob thought that Barrowmaze seems very bland. I didn't get the blandness out of it, but I feel like it probably can feel kind of samey because it is a lot of the same critters in a similar environment. So I think it might need some spicing up, Ian agrees with Rob Brennan, feels the same way. They the physical, and have flipped through it a few times. But I think the thing is with Barrowmaze, I imagine you could probably do a lot with it. I'd be curious to go and look up what people have done, because I just read through it, and it didn't seem. I didn't necessarily get a boringness that it was boring, but I can see how it can feel a lot of the same thing. I think I've heard people say that Barrowmaze works really well as a place that isn't necessarily the single focus of your campaign, but it's kind of there, and you can bebop out and do some other things and come back. The Lost City also gets known a lot. I guess all these four are really tied. They all have the same rating, so I guess maybe it's kind of a four-way tie. Lost City comes in right below there. Winter's Daughter also. Hole in the Oak also. Caverns of Thracia also. Deep Carbon Observatory, which I believe I own somewhere. Where do we think 2 Mars will place? I don't think it's going to place very high. I can't imagine it'll place very, very highly. I mean, I guess since its popularity, how often do we think I don't think it comes up that much because I don't think people seriously engage with it very much. It's just kind of thrown out there as just like, oh, I mean, mostly on the kind of it's terrible sort of thing. Caverns of Thracia is amazing. I've only read bits of Deep Carbon Observatory, so I really can't comment. Caverns of Thracia, I love it. I have this digitally, this this part of anomalous subsurface environment, which I thought was really clever when it came out, but I haven't looked at it in forever. Tower of the Stargazer, I think I've seen it. I don't remember really having run it. Castles in Tillin, it's kind of on my list. I want to kind of check it out, but I haven't done that yet. Well, at least I'm aware of it. Prison of the Hated Pretender, I don't know at all. System neutral, level 0 to 1, beginner friendly. Interesting. That one is really high for a thing I haven't even heard. I can't say I've ever heard it mentioned. So that's pretty crazy that is so high. I mean, it's above Hamlet. Hamlet is one of those that I don't know if I quite understand I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, and I like it because it's probably the first module at the time that really laid out a town with, I think, names, not just like, the keep had the keep and it had people in the keep. I think they didn't even have like people names. It was just like the Castellan, the somebody, like they just kind of had in there. Whereas I felt like the Village of Hamlet was the first time maybe they really fleshed out a town. But there's just the moat house, or no, yeah, is it the moat house, gatehouse, moat house? And that's it. I mean, I know originally it's going to lead to the temples of elemental evil that didn't come until way, way later. But it's just curious. I feel like it gets a lot more looking. I mean, I guess it is as kind of a sort of first stop town, or kind of an initial town with kind of a place that needs looking into in the area. I guess it kind of fits the bill. But sometimes I think, like, why are people all over Hamlet quite so much? It's on Bryce's list. Okay. See, that's how much I'm looking at different people's lists. So we have Village of Hamlet, then Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, the original one. Sailors on the Starless Sea. I'm actually surprised at this one. It's kind of curious to me that this one, Prison of the Hated Pretender, is above Sailors on the Starless Sea. So that's interesting. Death Frost Doom, which I think I also own a digital version of. I'm not sure if I super love it or not. Night's Dark Terror is a classic. Dark of Hot Springs Island is good. I kickstarted that one, I think, back in the day. Gardens of Yin, I've heard of. How did you like Hamlet? What did you guys do, Inkpen, in Hamlet? Did you guys use it as a home base? Did you go into the moat house and conquer it? Did you fall to the spider, or did someone get swallowed by, was it a giant toad that's in like the marshy moat? Maybe you need to look at it again. Maybe it'll be a good kind of classic stream. See, this is probably what surprised me. Isle of Dread being this low. That's kind of curious. And right there with it, In Search of the Unknown. Stygian Library, which I've heard about, but I don't know. Blackworm of Bransford, I like a lot. And one Against the Cult of the Reptile God. Awakening of Willoughby Hall. The Incandescent Grottos. Lair of the Lamb, which I just heard about this one recently. Maze of the Blue Medusa. I'm kind of surprised this one's this low. I feel like, I guess I'm not surprised. If this was a quality list, this wouldn't surprise me, because I think that Blue Medusa initially got a lot of love, I think, because of it at the time having a very interesting, artsy layout. But then I think people started to recognize the usability issues that abounded, I think, in there, and some of the other, I think, problems that running it would have. So I feel like if I was going to see this if I could look at this as a chart over time, I feel like, Blue Medusa would have gone like up and then down, probably where it is. I think Penn ate it multiple times in the moat house. Yep. Well, by the time you get to Tomb of Elemental Evil, it's kind of a completely different thing. That's just such a slog. But I think maybe I'll have to go back and do Hamlet, because I think there's some good stuff in there. But it's just interesting, the place it seems to hold in people's minds for what I feel like it's not. It's just this little intro to what was supposed to be to this greater thing, and then that greater thing, granted, did arrive eventually, but it was supposed to be kind of this launch pad in this thing that, at least at the time, didn't then show up. Ravenloft to Castle Amber. Morgan's Fort. Kind of surprised Morgan's Fort's maybe this low. Also Rapinathuk. I know Rapinathuk, or a Thuk. I kind of felt like that would maybe be higher. Broodmother Sky Fortress, I feel like, is underrated in terms of things. I mean, I don't know what these numbers mean. I mean, I'm just looking at these relative to others, but I don't know if these have numeric values or percentage values or whatnot. But I really like Broodmother Sky Fortress. I did a video on it, or at least on an aspect of it, ages and ages ago. Many Gates of Gan, I am totally unfamiliar with that. Slumbering Ursine Dunes, I've heard of, but that's about it. Evils of Ilmire. This one I would imagine will go up the list, because I think it's relatively new. I thought it was really good. White Plume Mountain. I might be surprised it's up here because it's kind of a. I wouldn't say that it's a style of dungeon that would be popular now. Kind of a fun house, but it's got some interesting fun stuff. It's got some cool magic items and stuff inside. Rob says Mini Gates is excellent. Scared their players so much they left it. What's the elevator pitch on Many Gates of Gan? What is it exactly? Rob, if you can type it in the chat, I'd love to hear it. And then as we go, see Halls of Arden Vool, Dark Tower, which I own. That's a good one. Dyson's Delve. I think I do have this somewhere. That's interesting. The Hyquius Vaults. I've heard of this one quite a bit. Maybe I'm surprised it's here given the other things that are above it, but I hear of it off and on. I'm trying to sort of line up what I see or read when I go through the subreddit in terms of people asking for recommendations stuff and where they are on the list. And some of these I feel like get more tossed around, though this isn't looking at like the subreddit. This is looking at, I'm guessing, the blogosphere and things like that. So there's probably a difference between what Reddit folks say. And of course, any given thread is just going to be dominated by what the folks who happen to see that thread then interact with it happen to say. But it's interesting, some of the stuff I feel like I hear more of, but then isn't in this other element. If we're looking at kind of Reddit talk versus sort of blogosphere stuff, how they changed. Because I would have thought that this might have been higher. And then I don't ever hear people mention Dyson's Delve. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but I just don't really hear it mentioned. So it's interesting where it sits. Though, again, this is all a snapshot in time. And because blog posts generally hang around forever, this list is probably going to wait either really well known or stuff that's been around for a while because they get to just ends up on more blogs. So Many Gates is about a time-traveling wizard lair that opened and has been infested by worse stuff. Ooh, interesting. Expedition to Barrier Peaks, which I want to do soon. The Sleeping Place of the Feathered Swine. I have no idea what that is for Lamentations. The Sky Blind Spire. Also have no idea. It's a one-page dungeon. Wow, one-page dungeon getting this much love. That's interesting. Did I look at that one? Did I do it? I wonder which year that is. Oh, well, Tomb of the Iron God by Matt Finch. There you go. Tomb of Horrors. They didn't number these, unfortunately, so we can't see where it is, but it made the list. Sunless Citadel. I think this is the first kind of, what is this, 3.x era D&D as terms of old school stuff. I think that's the first one that's showed up. Doom of the Savage Kings. I haven't heard of this one. Operation Unfathomable. I think that rings a bell vaguely. I've heard of The God That Crawls, but I don't know it. Through Ultan's Door, I think I've kind of heard of a bit. Temple of Elemental Evil shows up. I feel like that's not a really good adventure. Inkpen says it's lauded as a bad module by so many. Yeah, I think the fact is that because it's talked about so much, even if it's talked about as something that's not good, probably helps. Because remember, this is about popularity. So even if it's bad, but people love to bash it, then that will make this list as well as something that's awesome that people love to rave about. Like, I don't think Temple of Elemental Evil is really a good. It's such a slog, and there's just it. I don't love it. But even if that's what the scuttlebutt is around here, or people trying to fix it, or people whatever, the fact that it gets talked about a lot puts it on the list. Wow, Dwimmermount is this far down. Another one that's surprising. I know it had a whole up and down thing, but I would have thought that would have put it higher up on the popularity scale. Rob says it's iconic but poor. Yes, it is. Yeah, that's probably a really good way to put it. Iconic but poor. Yep. Fever Dreaming Marlinko. No idea what that is. Veins of the Earth. Kind of surprised it's this low. I mean, not that we're necessarily low on the list, but relatively low. They were going to be getting into a lot of stuff that I don't really know. Like this one, Pod Caverns of the Sinister Shroom. Don't know it. Teagle Manor. I know that one. No Shadow of Tower Silverax. I know that one. Yoon Suin. Maybe surprising it's this low, but I don't think it gets talked about a lot lately. It might have peaked in terms of its popularity, so that might be one reason. The Black Apple Brew, I don't know. Or is that Bruges? I'm not sure. Brug, I don't know, but I don't know it. Fever Swamp, I don't know that one either. Forbidden Caverns of Archaea, I own this one, and I really haven't looked at it very much. Dolmenwood, wow, that one's kind of low. I would have thought Dolmenwood would have been as big as OSC is. I would have thought Dolmenwood. Yoon Suin kickstarted a second edition recently. Okay, that's cool. Is it what's any I mean I could look it up, but if you know offhand what the second edition is bringing, is it changing systems? Is it updating anything? I mean, just, obviously if you know kind of broad big points, don't need to. I'll find the Kickstarter or something to read the details later. The Tomb of Black Sand, don't know that one. Ultraviolet Grasslands, know that one. That's kind of surprising. Maybe this is slow, but it's right above The Secret of Bone Hill, which is a good adventure. And then Highfell, which is another one I don't know. Wow, then the Lich Way. Oh, I have read the Lich Way, or I saw something. I think we did look at the Lich Way. Didn't we? Was it in a White Dwarf? Did somebody send it to me to look at? I think we did. So that's interesting. Palace of the Silver Princess is here, then Better Than Any Man, which I think I may have heard of. Hidden Shrine of Tamoachan. I know this one gets looked up a lot. Like, a lot of people like this in terms of old school ventures, which they really appreciate. I think Matt Fitch said it was one of his, he said it was one of his favorites. So kind of interesting its positioning here. Misty Isles of the Eld, I don't know at all. Hideous Daylight, don't know. Goblin Gully, don't know. Dwellers of the Forbidden City, I like this one a lot. Halls of Tizun Thane, it's another White Dwarf adventure, don't know it. Just Trilemma is here, which is kind of interesting. I don't know. I guess they just put it in as one big blob. Ironwood Gorge, which is now on my list, thanks to Frederick to look at, but I haven't looked at it yet. That's for Labyrinth Lord Osric. Against the Giants. I have such fond memories of Against the Giants. Not that I think it's necessarily great, but it's kind of, I don't know. I feel like it had a really cool, just the concept of it, I just thought was awesome. But I'm probably not surprised that overall it's down here. Burial Mound of Gilliard Wolf Clan. No, don't know that at all. Thieves of Fortress Badabaskor. Yep, I know that one. Forgotten Temple of Thara's Dun. I also know that one. Horror in the Hill. Yep. Temple of Bloodmoth. The Bloodmoth. Nope. Spire of Iron Crystal. Don't know that one. Scenic Dunsmouth. I know that one. Carcosa. This is probably where I think Carcosa maybe fits. I think it's another one of those that over time there was a part where everyone was like, oh, Carcosa. And then people were like, yeah, but it's kind of got some things that I don't think are nice in it. And it's kind of whatever. And I can see why some of those, I don't know if the edgy is the right word, but some of that stuff, the thing is like putting the creator politics and all that stuff aside, I think Lamentations is a really good rule book for tweaked BX style D&D. I think it's really excellent, but I just I don't love the edginess that they're going for. When I played a game, I ran a game of it, and I told my players, like, just ignore the artwork in the book because we're not doing that. And I didn't use any of these supplements. I think I ended up buying like maybe a digital version of Carcosa, and I think I have Scenic Dunsmith somewhere, and they have some things that are nice to offer, but I just never was into I don't know, the kind of the vibe that they were going for. But I think that the basic rules they had, I think they did an excellent job. I just wish I wish it wasn't controversial, which can't be helped. And I also just wish that, that there was maybe if they made one that was like not Grindhouse. Rob says a Spire of Iron and Crystal is a must play. All right. I'll check it out. Night Below, I know that one. Gunderhalfen, nope. Demon Spore, nope. It's good to see Matt Finch having a lot of stuff on here. Scourge of the Slave Lords, I know that one. Yep. Tomb Robbers of the Crystal Frontier. I kind of know that one. I think I may have seen it. Demon Driven to the Maw, nope. Lost City of Baracus. When I think of Baracus, I think of that Jesse Ventura movie from, was it the early 90s or mid 90s? Wasn't good. But I don't know the module. The Darkness Beneath from Fight On. I don't know that one either. The One Who Watches from Below. Yeah, I've seen that one. Sanctuary Ruin. Nope. The Monolith from Beyond Space and Time. I think I have this one. And then finally, Frozen in Time. That's really cool. I mean, that's a long list. I'm going to have to bookmark this list. Let's come back to it. I wonder if they're going to update it now and then. What do you think of the list? Anybody? I mean, here's the thing. Like, I've read some of these, more the classic ones. There's a lot on there that I haven't read. Would you feel? I mean, I guess it's the thing is it's popularity, right? So it's not really about what's fair, not just what gets talked about a lot. So I think, given how Tomb of the Serpent Kings is probably the beginner adventure of choice for new GMs, new players, it gets talked about a lot. And then, B2 is kind of, if BX is sort of the gaming document of the OSR, then in B2 is the module of the OSR. So it makes sense that that as a formative module would be up top. And then it kind of gets interesting going down. Yeah, a lot of the classics and new stuff. Yeah, I mean, not all of it's, I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'll have to just go look through these. Maybe I'll try to do that. Is just go down this list. I don't know. That's the thing. Like, some of these, I just don't know. I don't know if they're new or if they're older, and just, I don't know. But it's a cool list. How come I'm the first person to upvote this thing? Come on now. Come on now. All right. What are we doing on time? Oh boy, only a few minutes left. So let me see if I can find one more thing. And I'll just stick to the OSR subreddit because I'm here. Oh, this is watered down apple cider for the working man. Oh, let's see. If you had... Oh yeah, this one, I saw this yesterday. I did see this yesterday. I thought I would have upvoted it, but I guess I didn't. It didn't work, and I tried it on my iPad, and it didn't work. But it seemed like it'd be pretty cool. Okay, so it works here. Brian Smith says, Hamlet is intriguing to me as a good example of a self-contained, thoroughly detailed starting village from OSR times. Any others that are better? I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, maybe that's why Hamlet gets talked about as much as it does, is because there aren't that many. It is fairly self-contained in terms of everything being there, but you have to just keep in mind that Hamlet was originally meant to be this gateway for the Tomb of Elemental Evil. So it kind of has this sort of, it's sort of pushing you, it's meant to sort of put you on that path. I think it'd be very easy to excise those things or to change up whatever element, because I think you're supposed to find something. There's some kind of evidence in the moat house that you find that's supposed to then lead you on out. So you're kind of supposed to start in Hamlet, go to the moat house, you start to uncover the conspiracy, and then you move on. I forget wherever up over, above and beyond, or you move off. I don't think you're really intended to kind of stay in Hamlet for any extended period of time. But I know that people have done different things with it. It'd be interesting to go through and read the module, and then maybe read what some people have done. Because I think you could take Hamlet and then use, instead of taking their cue for what you find in the moat house leading you off to the Temple of Elemental Evil, or on that path, using that to set up some kind of local threat. I think I saw that someone one time did like a monster invasion of Hamlet. Pretty cool. I think you can do some neat stuff with it. Brian Smith says, a good village and a good dungeon seem like enough for an entire campaign. Yeah, you can definitely, I think, stretch it out. Not necessarily stretch it out, but yeah, work it out. Absolutely. Though the moat house isn't particularly expansive. It's not a mega dungeon or anything like that. It can definitely last a few sessions, but for a campaign, I think you need to expand it. Either expand its scope in the town if you wanted to do like a kind of an urban type situation where the evil is in the town that you're trying to get rid of, or other external sites. Or maybe there's, instead of the moat house, then there's some ruined keep beyond the moat house. I don't know. I think you'd probably have to bolster it somewhere. So here's this generator here. So we don't have any instructions, but we've got a random seed. We've got height power, height offset, height range, and biome offset, which I don't know what those mean. Gasher says, but you can actually expand the moat house. After all, it has a maze of twisting tunnels beneath. Yes. Well, there you go. That's true. You can turn the moat house into more of a mega dungeon, or at least a more extensive dungeon if you want to. I'm curious about what, because, okay, I see. So biomes just shows the biomes. Height map shows the height map, and then normal, you get the terrain built in. I wish you could overlay them a bit more. So we don't get, let's see. Height, so it's yellow to dark blue. Yellow to dark blue. We have a couple lakes, goes down to the sea, goes down, oh, I guess just the edge of the map. We can add more rivers. Oh, that's cool, because so adding the rivers gives you some more wetlands. I like that. We can lower the swamp threshold if we want to, or maybe raise the swamp threshold. That number of biome iterations. What happens if we... Whoa, you get some vastly different things if you... That's kind of interesting. I don't know. Not quite sure what that means. I kind of like it there are numbers here. Inkpen says, so biomes aren't tethered to the height map, just separate generation? I don't know. I imagine they would be linked. I don't know what iterations... We don't know exactly what iterations are doing precisely. So we are getting some oddities here. We have little patches of, I guess that's desert. There's just in the middle of some grass and some grassy hills. So I'm not sure. Like some of these, and I don't know. I mean, there's different types of deserts. I'm not sure. Let's randomize and see something else. Just to see what else things we can get. That almost seems like those rivers feel like it has an outdoor survival kind of vibe to it with the very vertical lines that map gets. Well, this is cool. In your browser and completely free. It's at tamus-rebel.github.io. And it's at /hex_world_generator /hex_world_generator.html. Perlin noise iteration, perhaps, maybe. And I don't know if there's any docs. You can go to their GitHub, or yeah, it's on GitHub, so you could potentially see the source code if it's open, and you could kind of check out, nose around, and see if you can figure it out. Well, it's cool, and I do like that you can separate out these images. If you wanted to take that out and do something else with it, you could. You could export for tiled. You can export just the river overlay, I guess, and then you can just download the tile set. But boom, boom, boom. So really cool tool. It's definitely a different way of doing it. I like these. I feel like this is one of the things I know I was talking to on the forums.hexed.press, which you come visit. I was talking to Krister, who's a friend of the channel, about he likes to do a lot of solo gaming, and he was coming up with some mechanics to draw a hex map solo game. And one of the issues what he's trying to do is basically playing solo, not generate a hex until you move your piece onto the hex. So you're kind of hexing out as you go. And I remember talking about that. What you can end up with some oddities. Like one of the things that he was running into, I think, was water. Like water could be funny because what if you roll and you depending on how you've moved around, you hadn't rolled water like a river, but then you roll a river and it's like, well, where's the river go? Because the neighboring hexes don't have river. You can end up with some oddities. And I feel like ultimately, while I guess it's fun to have sort of manual hex map, randomized kind of hex map system, that to me is where you get now who's playing it doesn't have access to some kind of computer, laptop, tablet, something where you get something like this and just randomize, keep hitting this randomize button until you see something you like, and then drill down into it. Like, I guess it's great to have for a rainy day if you're in a cabin in the woods without internet and you just want to make a map. I suppose it's probably nice to have a fallback, but I just think using a tool like this, or using the generators and something like Worldographer or whatever your hex mapper of choice is just, man, it's just so much easier. and just skip all that pain. And then you can just start looking at this and going, ooh, well, there's probably, it's probably a town here on this lake. And maybe there's a little culture up here. And like, ooh, look at this. And look at this area. Look at these mountains. Like, and just skip the doing the map if you don't have to. By hand, I mean. So these are great. All right, folks. Any last thoughts before I call it a stream? Don't cross the streams. Or do you have to cross the streams? Get that good old total protonic reversal. Old Team Patrol. Yep, you're in time for the end of Old Team Patrol. But the good thing is you can just rewind back to the beginning. And you'll have gone back to the future or back to the past from the future. I don't know. You'll figure it out. All right, folks. Have a great weekend. If you give a thumbs up on your way out, that'll be awesome. If you found yourself in here and not subscribed to the stream and you feel like subscribing, that would also be awesome. Otherwise, have a great rest of your weekend if you're here now, or if not, whatever day or night you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody. Talk to you later. Bye now.